Welcome back to Geek Channel 8, GC8, the podcast for movie geeks and other kinds of entertainment. Yeah, we're not solely limited to movies, although it is our primary focus.
Ooh, jumping off point. Mhm.
Jumping off point, yeah. So we are in the midst of our look at dinosaurs in the movies, which took us on a detour last time into Fantasia by Disney, which does have dinosaurs, was an animated anthology of tales. Today, we're going to look at the Italian response film to Fantasia, Allegro non troppo. So, pardon us while we detour a little further away from dinosaurs, but
Oh
we will
yeah.
get back. We will get back to them.
Well, okay. So full disclosure, I'm a crunchy granola type person, old school, the kind of guy who grew up with his dad wearing like Birkenstocks and overalls, and now I wear Birkenstock. Well, okay, they're not Birkenstocks, but still on overalls. I needed escape, and I found it. It's contained. It's beautiful. It's lovely. It actually ties back into a movie that we watched not too long ago. And you, Eric, you can take this dive. See, I know you're a completionist, so it makes it hard. But this one, it's all in one spot. It's called Chaos, and it was wonderful. It's spelled with a K. Starring Life Finds a Way. Jeff Goldblum. If you have any affinity for any of Jeff Goldblum, you should watch. If you have any affinity, and I know you do, for the Greek gods and their stories, you should watch it. Everything felt character driven. It all felt like, okay, yeah, so we all know these stories. We know the stories. We know basically what's supposed to happen, blah, blah, blah. And we also know like the overall beats, which is, the Greeks were pretty obsessed with like, children killing their parents. Probably happens a lot or something. I don't know. Anyway, but I think everything felt like it was driven by the human characters of these deities. Yeah, that's the thing about Zeus or Athena or whatever. They are driven by their very human seeming desires and jealousies and everything else. My youngest, when he was really little, we were reading a graphic novel version of Odyssey, and at a certain point, they were like, Dad, I don't think he's very good to his wife, and she's really good to him. Talking about Odysseus. I mean, it's just basic human stories.
Welcome to Greek mythology. I mean, that's just
Right?
like no, that's like normal, right?
Right. Okay. Also, I have to admit okay, so without any spoilers, Prometheus figures prominently in this story, and that's my dude. Like, flat out my dude. Also, there's a problem where in most of the stories, when they adapt Greek mythology, they turn Hades into the devil. They don't do that here. It means a lot to me. He's one of the cooler dudes. But whereas we definitely see Poseidon is pretty much like you'd expect him to be. And I mean, these are things where I'm like, yeah, I like their take, and I feel the character drivenness. It's done, I'm told. So whatever we get, that's what we get. That's it.
I appreciate that. We've talked about that on the show before, how it's like
Yeah.
there needs to be more of that where it's like right now, that's a Netflix show, and a lot of the Netflix shows are still in limbo, like Wednesday. Well, how old is Wednesday gonna look by the time there's a second season of Wednesday out? Stranger Things, another example, all kids, right? They're like adults now.
I'll be like, hello, fellow kids.
Yeah. Hello, fellow kids. We'll have to see how that goes. Do you have any info for us going into this?
Yeah. Okay. So what I've discovered in doing this with you is that There's always war and conflict. Now, in this particular case, there was no war going on in Italy at this time. It's Italian film, okay? But they refer to this time period in Italy as the years of lead because there were a lot of extreme people on the right and the left murdering each other and citizens in the streets. So there's that. Isn't that nice? More of our 60s, sort of, but they kept doing it well into the 80s. And actually, that's not unusual, apparently, in a lot of European places. So, like, like Spain or whatever, they were still doing it. That was what's going on. But they had they had a socialist government and Christian socialist thing. It was what it was. Now, in terms of film, totally different milieu. This is a different life we're living. It's like, for instance, big film the year before, Dog Day Afternoon. You haven't seen it? You should see it. It's really good. Okay.
Attica.
I mean, really good and just yeah. I mean, those were some. Honestly, I feel like this in a lot of ways. These were the glory days of film. I kind of grew up watching a lot of these films from that time period on the TV, even chopped up. They were magnificent. So, but also the Rocky Horror Picture Show came out. So, the sexual revolution was going on. And to put into context for animation, well, let me put it this way. It was for Disney in particular. Well, they had a couple years before, they had done one of our favorites, one of we referred to it in the last episode, Robin Hood. So let's be clear. If you haven't seen Robin Hood, it stars animals, right? It's a Disney film. It has animals, but they don't act goofy mostly. It's mostly like they're acting like in a film. I would compare it to almost like an animated version of say The Princess Bride or something like that.
Well, I think the difference here is that in a lot of Disney animation, they're animated humans like Snow White, but she has friends that are animals,
Right,
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
Or or they're straight up animals that are animated Lady and the Tramp style, you know?
Yeah.
But this movie, they're animal people.
They're anthropomorphic animals, and they're not goofy, and they're not a Mickey. They're not funny animals. They're animals who play as humans. And yeah, I so many furries were inspired by this.
Somehow that is incredibly appealing to a certain demographic, like the idea that they're a fox person.
I was thinking about this. And we're way off topic as usual, but like basically, it was a kids' movie. It took itself seriously. Okay, took itself seriously in a lot of places. It was like serious action. We didn't know whether Rob was going to make it. Blah blah blah. They had a love story. My sisters were, I'm 4 or whatever, I forget, but whatever. But like, they were like, Robin, he's sexy, They're not furries, but whatever, It was all the things, he was a perfect appeal for a tween girl, right? So it was a thing. But that all this is put in context. This is what we're comparing what we're about to see to, and then they did the Aristocats. It's so worlds away from Disney. It's very countercultural to Disney.
But they mention Disney.
Oh yeah, I mean, no, this on purpose. It's very purposeful.
They don't say the word Disney. They have to change it so they don't. I think they were afraid of getting sued or something like Pisney or whatever.
They're the heavies, they're great. If you're going to, it's like calling the police on yourself. Like, haha, we're against you. It kind of it sets you up for being counterculture. It's like going against Disney. So good.
Now, ironically, the film is like loved apparently by the Disney company in their animations training. They use one of the segments
No way.
to help teach animation. It's just a really well loved animated film in Disney circles and by the Disney company itself. So take that as you will.
It's very irreverent.
And let's be clear about something. This was a conscious response to Fantasia. There are segments that
Yeah,
directly reference
yeah.
Fantasia, besides them talking about it in the opening. It came out in 1976. It was directed by Bruno Bozzetto, I think is how you say his name. 6 segments, runs the range of emotional content. There are interspersed live action black and white segments. Unlike Fantasia, which just has the people in the beginning, the intermission, and the end,
Yeah.
this has them throughout the whole thing between every segment. It is some broad based slapstick humor. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah. Lots of transgression.
I'm just going to quote directly from Wikipedia because I'm not a linguist and I wanted to know what Allegra non troppo means. I don't know if this is true. Again, I'm getting it from Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. But supposedly, the title in music and instruction of Allegro ma non troppo means to play fast, but not overly so.
Hmm.
Without the ma, Allegro non troppo, the Italian sentence should be written as non troppo allegro, which means not so happy. And in musical terms, it could be interpreted as not too fast. While allegro ma non troppo bears a positive connotation, as in, quote, happy just not so much, non troppo allegro sounds more negative, as in not really that happy. So I don't know how to parse all that out, but there we go.
Yeah, I know. I mean, honestly, seems well titled because it's kind of dark in places. There's a lot of gallows humor.
I think that they're definitely saying we're not Disney. Where this is not going to be as happy-go-lucky as a Disney film, but who knows?
Okay, so I had some struggles with Fantasia. This one kind of slapped me around, kept me going the whole time. It's like, what? The opening feels very inappropriate. I'm like, feel are you hurting people in the cattle cars here? What is happening?
Yeah, apparently this is like one director who's very P.T. Barnum-esque, like he wears flashy costumes and stuff like that, and he breaks fourth wall and he talks directly to the audience, and he's like, he's making this film, which is kind of like a live performance. He kidnaps a bunch of old ladies to be the orchestra. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what the significance of that is. And then they have a artist who they've kept for 7 years locked up
Cartoon
in
style, hanging on the wall.
the dungeon,
Uh,
I'm not really sure what to make of that. Um yeah, he
oh,
says
and
that he's a binding contract based on trust and mutual respect. So I have no idea. There's a cleaning woman who appears in each segment. They pretty much ignore her except the animator who seems to have a crush on her.
yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh, don't let's not forget Italian John Belushi, who is the maestro.
Yep.
the,
Yep.
the brutal maestro. Okay, definitely gave me Belushi vibes. He's chomping on a cigar. He's abusing old ladies and everybody around. he's he,
Yeah.
he's Bluto. He's all these things. He's a cartoon villain,
Yeah.
but he's live action. This is the live action part.
Yeah. So is the director kind of, and like, because I don't want to like keep coming back to the live action segment separately,
Yeah.
we'll come back and talk about the last one and how it ends. But just to suffice to say, like, there was a depressing segment, and they try to make the artist less depressed by like getting a prostitute and trapping him and the prostitute inside a grand piano.
Yes,
Like,
yes, they do.
there's that. At one point, a gorilla or a person in a gorilla costume runs wild loose on the stage. I have no idea what that was about. Like, there's so much stuff.
But they have a dance sequence.
Yeah, yeah.
Chaplin, very Chaplin-esque.
And the whole thing is like, I think one problem is that humor does not translate very well from culture to culture. What's like funny in one is like not as funny in another, or like in my case anyway, just perplexing a lot of times. I'm like, I know this is supposed to be funny, but I don't know why, you know?
Honestly, I wonder because I did watch the version that had the translation. It made the difference for the fourth wall parts. Because without that, I would have been totally lost on that, and it wouldn't have been as fun. But like, so you have this frantic showman guy in this, fancy suit, and he's forcing his vision into existence, and you have this abused orchestra. They're giving them gruel while they're drinking champagne and eating, a fine feast, and I think the artist ends up eating paper. I mean, it's all of it is. It's like I don't know. I would call it like editorial cartoon. So for me, it translated actually pretty well. Loved it. It's like a love letter to some things. In a way we're like, oh, it's counter, but it's also like a love letter to some of the things they're depicting and showing. It's like I see what you did there. Yes, and not
Yeah.
just like, oh, I dismiss it.
So in this, the artist has a drawing table right on the stage. So he's supposedly creating the animations in real time while he's being accompanied to music. So let's jump into the first one, which is Claude Debussy's Prelude à l'après-midi d'une fan, I guess is how you say it. Again, don't expect me to pronounce this stuff right, but there you go. And this one is about a satyr who's like a middle-aged satyr who
Yeah.
attempts to look young a variety of different ways.
He even has a Disney princess glow up at one point.
Yep. And with each failure, he gets physically smaller
Yeah.
until, he has to roam the vast countryside, which is a woman's body. Okay, so there's a lot of kinkiness in all of these, but this one, there's like the sort of giantess thing going on.
He gets smaller. He's hanging off her leg. There's boob trees. There's like leg shrubbery. There's like and it's okay. So I was mentioning this guy reads so much Nowhere Man from the Yellow Submarine, which
Yeah.
turned I had to go look. That came out in '68. So, the inspiration, I mean, I'm not saying that they got it directly, but yeah, probably. But like, yeah, he reads that and very much so. Honestly, I kind of loved it because it was like, he's a little lecherous little man and all his attempts at trickery fail.
Yeah. You feel a little sorry for him, but yeah, it definitely upturns the satyr myth. So it's kind of the opposite of
Yeah.
what you usually expect. And I'm glad you mentioned Nowhere Man because it does have a Beatles Yellow Submarine. I don't know, maybe the same animators worked on it. I have no idea.
You know what?
Um,
That's a possibility. Might have been like, finally, we get to show more boobies. Bad boobies, lots of boobies here.
when we were talking about Fantasia, we talked about the censorship
Yeah.
and how like nipples had to be like like erased out. And so there are these breasts without nipples and stuff like that. I think that they probably saw that and they're like, oh hell no. Like we're gonna like, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you people, but we're gonna show because there are boobs everywhere in
Oh
this.
man. No, like I said, there's a literal boob tree.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought they were just gonna feed, some middle-aged fantasy, but if anything, they kind of went snuff that out. And I don't know what the whole point about him being smaller and smaller, and to the point where he's a little person on the land, the very land that is the woman. I'm sure there's some metaphor there, but whatever. It's okay. It didn't have to be explained. I liked it.
Okay. So that takes us to the second one, which is Antonin Dvorak's Slavonic Dance, number
Oh,
7. It starts in a cliffside, like cave dwelling area, and one of the cave dwellers comes out and builds himself a hut.
yeah.
And then all the other cave dwellers see that, and so they build themselves huts. And so then he like tears his hut down and builds like three pigs style. He builds his out of bricks. And then they all do that, and then they build high rises and et cetera, et cetera. You know, he keeps attempting to break away from the pack, and then the pack keeps following him.
And he becomes more and more misanthropic. Like, I hate these people. All communicated with just facial expressions and whatever. Very simple style. Ultimately, he tries to. He's like, "Oh, you're going to follow me? Well, I'm going to. You insist on it. I'm going to put it into you. I'm gonna. Yeah, I'll use your weird obsession with doing what I do to put it into you with, again, a comeuppance. Not It doesn't work out that way. Cool, quick, snappy, to the point. Loved it. Nice, nice. Ending. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
And it was. I'm like this again. I'm getting. I'm almost like I'm reading like collection of editorial cartoons. They got some things to say, and they say them, and they do it. The pacing's really good too, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is the centerpiece of this,
Oh yeah.
which is its sort of tenuous connection to dinosaurs. Everything in this is more abstract, so I think we can call them dinosaurs. They're clearly dinosaur-like. This is Ravel's Bolero, and in this, like, space travelers like leave behind a bottle of Coke with some Coke left in it on this planet, and it eventually becomes primordial goo, and then the primordial goo becomes sentient, slowly splits off and evolves into creatures, and eventually it's an entire planet full of creatures. They go through all the stages of evolution, they go through water and flying and all of that.
Now, to be clear, they're not doing Earth creatures. You can see some parallels, but these things are bizarro. It's like a Seussical nightmare. It is kind of awesome. I can honestly say I see a lot of recycled stuff and recycled imagery. This is all new to me.
And there's no avoiding that this is the direct response to the Rite of Spring segment of Fantasia. It,
Yes.
it clearly is.
There's a lot of things eating each other, a lot of things seeming to have sex and laying eggs and things growing from them, one after the other. It's this carnal circle of life and it accumulates in this. We start seeing this furtive, saw-toothed, grinning ape creature sneaking through the whole procession. By the way, music, I love Bolero. I grew up listening to it, no context. It just was like one of the records that was around, and it was just great to listen to, even as a kid. And they come to this ending with it involves sort of the chimp being this underlying mastermind behind it or something. I don't know. Has something to say. I'm not sure exactly what, but definitely watching it get there, very enjoyable, and timing, tempo, everything great. I loved it.
Yep, this is good. Grew up listening Bolero too. I think Bolero's a great choice. It's interesting seeing which pieces of classical music they choose to use in this, since it's a response to the Disney film. The next one is called, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but I think it's called Valse Triste. And it's about a stray cat that is alone in the ruins of a large house. And he, I guess, lived there, and he remembers all of the people that used to live there when it was occupied. This is a very sad one.
Yeah, it was. Well, I mean, it was a tone shift.
Yeah, Phil Hall, film journalist, wrote that it's genuinely heartbreaking and one of the most beautiful sequences in animation history. It's yeah, it's sad. It made me go find my cats and pet them. Eventually all of the images just fade away. Like every time it goes to where it thinks it sees a human and tries to go see them, and then it disappears. And at the end, the remains of the house are demolished.
Yeah. And the cat itself disappears. And it's like, wow. Like, yeah, I'm like, huh. Yeah, that was I'm glad there wasn't more of that, but that was really, again, I feel like it had something to say and it delivered it in, a beautiful, timely manner. It's I'm not a big, okay, look, I used to really love the psychologically torturous and, you know, movies and stuff like that. My actual life is much more involved now, so I'm not big on that. But yeah, but just the idea of being remembered, it honestly made me think. I'm like, oh, the idea of a cat remembering me that way. I'm a dog person more, so of course I'm like thinking about my dog remembering me that way. But like, I'm like, yeah, no, that it was a perfect vehicle, you know. I was
Yeah, I think that this gets at the heart of why this was made. I get the feeling that the humor is in the intersegments,
yeah.
the live action segments. And this is speculation, but I feel like the Italians are like, "Oh, Fantasia, it's beautifully animated, but it lacks a soul. Doesn't have the passions of an Italian opera here. It needs to have heartbreak and non-censored sex, and that's what life is about." That's what I get out of this whole thing.
Yeah, oddly, they use the live action segments to humorize what came before or after. For instance, they had the big monkey after the sequence where there was a malevolent monkey in the Allegro sequence. And then after this sequence, they're like, oh my God, this is what you give us? This is not fun and happy. We need to get you laid. So they do that. That's the sequence where they stick him in a piano with a prostitute.
That sets up the next one, which is Vivaldi's Concerto in C major. It's a bright, beautiful, sunny day, and there's a bee setting up everything for the perfect like day. She has her TV and she has her food and she has her, everything set up. And then there's like a couple of humans that come and they're constantly like about to step on her or whatever. It's a man and a woman, and they're getting slowly and slowly more amorous.
They're tossing out clothes, and she's just like, "Oh my God!" It's a wonderful birds and the bees sort of, like, oh, but the bees just trying. I'm just trying to have some food here. I'm trying to set a nice table and eat. And you.
Yeah.
This brings up something. The animation style changes. There's some changes in the Disney, but there was way more changes from one segment to the next, and next in animation style and art style in this movie. I don't know if that's because they used entirely different artists, etc. I don't know why that came about, but definitely not only did the tones shift, but the animation style shifts more. Like this animation was very different than the one that came before. The one that came before was much more sketchy. This one's much more defined. Just different flavors.
Yep. Next up, one of my favorite pieces of music, as I said last time, Stravinsky's Firebird. Now, they had originally planned to use Stravinsky's Firebird in Fantasia, as I mentioned last time, and they eventually went with a different Stravinsky tune, Rite of Spring, for that segment. This is one where I'm like, okay, yes, someone did do Firebird, which I think is a great piece of music. However, just like when Fantasia did the Nutcracker, they didn't do the literal interpretation of the Nutcracker. This is not the literal interpretation of a Firebird. Instead, they have like claymation.
Yeah.
This is kind of weird. It's like an Adam and Eve tale, and there's a animated snake that's trying to tempt them with an apple, and they both refuse. So the snake eats the apple itself. Yeah, wow. I think that this is kind of like their attempt at a Night on Bald Mountain segment for this.
I guess so. But I mean, again, these are editorials. This is an editorial cartoon, and this is talking about modern life. This is all the modern ills. I mean, and some very modern ones. There's like multiple screens coming at him. He ends up in mind-numbing jobs. It's the, somebody trying to push sex on you all the time and manipulate you. It's
I think it's the use of sex in advertising was a big one.
oh yeah. He is bedeviled by all the modern ills, and he comes back to where he's back with the Adam and Eve, and he literally just spits that thing out. And he's like, he's describing it to them how horrible it was, and he's like, this and this and that, which I thought they were gonna have like then have humans be, oh, that sounds great, but no, they skip that. You know what you need? All you really need is love. You don't need this other crap. That there's this ongoing like, you don't need all that stuff. Let's just get back to a boy and a girl.
It reminds me again of the Beatles of like,
Yeah.
all you need is love. And like that was literally a song that was in Yellow Submarine, right? So it's like
Oh yeah.
this in many ways is the visual and thematic successor to Yellow Submarine more than it is to Fantasia. The last segment has this hunchback who is supposed to like figure out the finale for them because they didn't know the finale. So he looks at he has like a pile of stages with curtains and he looks behind each one to see which one is the ending to use.
Yeah, we have a narrator saying like he's calling like I know I'll call him. It's like this is a theater. You should be able to. But surely you have tons of finales come flying around because the snake came out of the thing and scared off all the old ladies and the artist escapes with the serving girl. So now he has no way of ending this.
Yes.
So what do we get? We get finale after finale, and they're all dark and sort of gruesome and
Yeah, one is set to Brahms' Hungarian Dance number 5. One is to Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody number 2. We also hear Johann Sebastian Bach's Toccata Fugue in D minor, which, if you remember, was the opening of Fantasia.
this is very modern. This is like if you grew up and you're like, like I'm watching, I don't know, liquid television or any kind of like, shorts where it's like, yeah, where it's a really, really short bit that's going to show you something shocking and kind of cool visually and whatever, and then move on to the next one, and next one, next one. Of course, these are all endings, and usually somebody gets ended. That you'll recognize this. It's like, oh wow, look at this. And yet I love it because I'd never seen these things done before. So it was really nice.
My final thought about this is I'm glad I watched it, and I think it's good for what it is. I don't think I'll ever watch it again. It, in most ways, pales in comparison to Fantasia, though. If you're gonna set yourself up against something like that, that's a tall order. Fantasia, I believe, is superior in almost all ways. The production quality, the animation. The one thing that is up for debate is which had better use of music. Like this one hits me a little bit in that Bolero and Firebird are two of my favorite classical pieces, and they're in it. I also like the Slavonic dance, but then you stack that up against Night on Bald Mountain, Rite of Spring, and Toccata Fugue in D minor, and I'm like, that's pretty much a tie. I think musically they're a tie, but animation wise, no doubt in my mind that the quality of the animation is just better. And if for nothing else, if you leave aside the Rite of Spring dinosaur stuff, if you leave aside Sorcerer's Apprentice, and you just had Night on Bald Mountain and Ave Maria, just that alone, if I had to choose one to be like I'm the film preservationist and I'm like one of these gets preserved and the other doesn't, it's going to be Fantasia, like without a doubt.
Okay, that's definitely fair. I mean, I'm actually kind of coming looking at this from a scrappy upstart sort of viewpoint. This has a lot to say, and they do it clearly with a lot less. We forgot to mention one of the sequences is a cartoon showdown between the artist and the abusive maestro, and the artist gets the upper hand. The maestro ends up in a human shaped hole through the stage. Okay, so you can imagine the rest because that's how it is. this is a love letter of various sorts to these different things that inspired them. They did a lot with a little. It's sort of gonzo and crazy. They punch above their weight. But I think that your conclusion, if you had to choose one, oh yeah, I would. There's no doubt that one, that sequence alone puts it above. None of the animation makes me say, oh, we gotta save that. But the experience is good, and it's actually something I would like to sit down and watch the kid with the kid because I will get that reaction from him. He'll be like, "What? No, you can't." I think he will really dig that. So yeah,
Okay. Well, I did appreciate the more openness when it came to sexuality in this. It does not have a lot of the anesthetic of Disney to it. So
yeah.
that I definitely appreciated. That said, I don't think I'm gonna watch it again, and I know I'm gonna watch Fantasia again sometime. So there we go. All right, we're gonna wrap this up by saying if you like the program, give us a good review, give us a high star rating on whatever platform it is that you got this on or found this on. Like, subscribe, whatever that particular platform has for its way of indicating that you like something, do that. Better than that, everyone, we're asking you, if you like the show, just tell 2 people. This year, our goal is to just double the audience, or triple the audience rather, because you plus 2 other people. So if you could do that, that is probably the best thing you could do to help the show. Until next time, this is Eric
And this is Will.
signing off.
Peace. As king of media, I declare it. Seasons have a full arc, complete story, all done. If you want to do another, fine. But we're finishing what we started.